Hi Journals for Live fans. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'm so excited today to show you a tiny little tidbit. So I've had a lot of people ask me, how do you stamp, like right out the package with these clear stamps? And I know that there's like 5 million tutorials out there and people do it different ways. But I thought I'd tell you what I do. Here are a few tips and tricks that I do. So first I must preface this with, I'm a little lazy. I don't want to finagle with the stamps too much. If I have to do that, I'm just not going to stamp, or I won't buy the product again. So I usually go for the sure thing, and I go straight for techniques that get me stamping and up and running. I don't do the whole eraser on the back. I think that is damaging the stamp. Some people like to do it. If that's you, you do you, boo. But I'll show you a few things that I do to get these to stamp. So first of all, know that when these come from the manufacturer, generally there may be some release, like surfactant on there, and that might interfere with the ink. So you can wash them if you'd like to just run them under, the faucet with soap and water. But my favorite things to do usually is I will stamp them with an archival ink. Or I might stamp them with a watermark ink, and I'll stamp them a few times, and then that makes them primed and ready to go and stamp any other color. So the difference between the two are some people don't like the stamp to take in color, and they don't like the stamp to be black. That doesn't bother me. I'm a big messy stamper. I stamp all over the place, and you can see, look, my stamps are, I've cleaned them, but they're not going to come 100% clean. You can get them that way. If it bothers you, you can clean it, but I'm not too concerned about it. It stamps. If I stamp these right here, they would stamp clean without the other colors. It's just the stamps are stained. Staining stamps don't bother me. So if they don't bother you, you could go straight to this archival ink or an archival ink. Ranger makes some really great ones. I have some in the shop. If that does bother you, you can use a watermark stamp pad, and this will prime your stamp as well. It's clear, and I use this just for priming stamps. So let me show you the difference between what I've got going here. So first, I'm going to stamp without priming. So this is me just taking a stamp. I didn't prime it. I'm going to try to stamp right out the box with it. And a lot of people do that. They make this mistake, and it's not the clearest. It usually comes out real splotchy. So people say, why is that so splotchy? And this would be why. So stamping the very first time right out the package, you're not going to get a very clean, crisp, clear image. So what you can do is take an archival ink, and the other thing I do is I have some type of foam. I have these in the shop as well. A couple people still make them. I'm not sure if Stampin' Up! Still makes them, but I do. I have some in the shop. I like a piece of foam. It gives a better impression. So here's the archival ink. So let me try something since I've already stamped this 2 or 3 times. Let's stamp with the archival ink straight out the package. Like straight up, just. So I kind of rub it like this, and then usually an archival ink will give you a pretty good clear impression right out the top. And then the great thing is, after you've done that, so after you've used that archival ink a couple times, you clean your stamp. Now I'm going to take that same color. See how splotchy it was in the beginning? I'm going to take that same brown color. Now that I've primed my stamp. And look at the difference. So this is not primed. This is a stamp that's been primed. And then this is archival ink. Alright, so that kind of shows you a little bit of the difference. So let's do another thing. Let's take this brand new stamp, never been used. And we're going to use Versamark this time. So I only use this to prime stamps. That's why it's so dirty. I'm not real careful with it. So this is a watermark stamp. It's very clear. And you can use it to emboss. But I usually just take it and I'll stamp it. And now I feel like my stamp is primed. So that's nice and primed. I usually don't clean it off because it's clear. So I leave it on there. You can wipe it off if you want to, but generally after you do that, you've got a nice primed stamp. That's an archival ink. And then actually look, you can see maybe taking the watermark would be good because it made, see how it made my book nerd a little see-through there. So I take back what I just said. So after you do the watermark ink pad, go ahead and wipe it off. And then we'll try stamping it. That should give you a nice crisper solid image. That's the archival ink. And here's the Memento Tuxedo Black. It's another one. I don't like this as much as I do the Ranger archival ink. This one's more in my mind solid, and it's gives me a really good impression just about every time. Sometimes the Memento doesn't give me as solid an impression, but it's a pretty good ink. You can tell, see that one's kind of not a good impression, but archival ink, that's just my favorite. Like, I just love it straight out the gate. It's real solid. So those are a couple tips and tricks. So after you get your stamp primed here, I'm going to clean off the Memento and the archival ink and grab another color. So there's a big difference in inks as well. So my favorite ink is Catherine Pooler. Look how nice and dark that is. So just to show you, that's a premium dye ink. There's a lot of dye inks out there. I have some from Studio Calico, close to my heart. And I also have some from Stampin' Up. And I don't believe that the Stampin' Ups are dye ink. Yes, they are. Well, they're water-based dye ink. So by far my favorite is Catherine Pooler, followed by, I love these Studio Calico, and then Close to My Heart is a good third choice. So to kind of show you what that might look like is these are Catherine Pooler inks. See how nice and dark those are? And let's see if I can find, there's a Studio Calico. Look at that impression. That's really good. And then here's like a Stampin' Up color. So you see the coverage is not as opaque, you know, and sometimes it doesn't look bad in a stamp. You don't need it to look opaque. I got an opaque stamp to make this so I could see what it would truly look like if you had a stamp that requires a lot of ink on it and it's not just an outline. So those are the differences in inks, and I'll show you a Catherine Pooler ink. Generally stamps a really nice solid impression every single time. So this is stamping with a primed stamp. Let's grab one I haven't used yet. Let's maybe take the saying here, and let's see what the Catherine Pooler one does. So no priming. I'm just going to stamp with this premium dye ink. No priming. And you can see, even though that's a premium dye ink, it's just a little bit mottled. So in the whole scheme of things in our experiment here, and what I do is I always prime the stamp. Even with the best ink that I have, look how good these impressions are. Even with the best ink, you still have to prime your stamp. You don't want to skip the priming the stamp step. Once you prime it, you should be golden. So here's my tried and true method. using an archival ink. And then I'll just clean that off. It kind of soaks down into the stamp. It also cleans the surfactant off. And then let's look and see what it looks like now. Yep, see how nice that looks? That's so much better, so much darker. So there you go. So step 1, prime your stamps. I just showed you the easiest way that I do it because I don't like to finagle with them. Whether you use an archival ink or a watermark stamp pad, make sure that you stamp a few times. And once you start getting a good impression, you see how it goes from okay to really good and dark. Once you finally get that impression, then stamp on your project. You don't want to stamp on your project if you haven't tested your stamp. That's something else that new stampers will do. They'll grab it and, you know, they've been inspired by a video and then they stamp and then they're really disappointed. Don't want to be disappointed in your stamps. You invested that money, so make sure you just take that little extra step in priming your stamp, and I think you should be good to go. Thanks for watching.